Well, folks, welcome to another episode of the Freedom Alchemist Podcast. I'm Paul Greene.
And I'm Kate Austin.
And we're all about freedom here. And we both wanted, this conversation is it's mostly about our parents and our upbringing and parenting. So if you're a parent or you have a parent.
If you have a parent, because this.
Or you don't want to be a parent, because it's apparent that you don't want to be a parent.
So this conversation could offer a little freedom of perspective.
That's right.
Shall we say, on what it is to be a parent and from our perspective. And
we have kids. We have children.
And what it is to overcome the parenting that you had.
Yeah. Because there's often times where we end up on your worst or you default to how you were parented. Mm-hmm. And just know that your parents did the same thing. They parented you the way that they were parented.
And we're in the generation now where some of our parents were dealing with, sort of wartime childhoods, right? And then it's going up. Now, we both have older parents. And so we're on the spectrum of understanding, how different being a child was in those times.
Right.
To being a child in present day and the different things that children are facing now compared to what children were facing back then.
It's just so curious watching our parents try to grandparent our 3-year-old. Like we have a 3-year-old and we have a 21-year-old. And both of our parents when they were just here. We just spent a month with Kate's mom in Asia, which is a reality show in itself, and traveling with an 84-year-old and a 3-year-old through Thailand and Vietnam.
May I make a point? Because Paul and I are freedom junkies. We don't like to book or plan too much. Oh. And I've been to Thailand 13 times, so I was like, that is a piece of cake.
13?
Yeah. So it was a piece of cake. It's no longer the same country. And so trying to rock up with no accommodation or no plan booked with a toddler and 84-year-old, do not recommend it.
Yeah, don't just
that
wing
isn't
Asia.
Freedom in any way, which we learned the hard way, especially in high season.
Yeah, we did. That's right. So we had to alchemize our situation into freedom many times.
There was a lot of beauty and a lot of pain and a lot of surrender. Yeah.
And in the struggle, though, was a lot of beauty and memories. And if it was this flawless, like pristine, luxurious thing, we wouldn't have all the memories. We have a lot of ridiculous memories.
We do. And you never remember the great holidays. It's always the one you had to overcome something that you remember for the rest of your life. So we'll remember that one. That's one for the books.
That's true. Yeah. Think back to any vacation you remember. You only remember the lost bags or the broke down
pouring
boats.
Rain and the yeah. So anyway, we had this month in this extreme environment with my mother. And lucky she's like the most easygoing. Like there were days where we did over 10,000 steps and she was just keeping up with it.
She's
over like
84,
wobbly like cobblestones and
with a child in a stroller and bags.
A
couple of those days we did.
Yeah, so that was one thing. And
just fanging it.
Yeah, she's a fanger.
She's amazing.
An Aussie fanger. Which
84.
is just rolling with the flow. There was one point where I had read about these amazing sleeper trains because we were in Vietnam.
Oh my goodness!
And we wanted to go to a different part of Vietnam, and I'd read that they're amazing, and I was like, oh, it's totally overnight trains, and they were totally booked out where I could find it. And Paul went and talked to someone at the hotel and he's like, I got us a thing. And I'm like, how did you manage that? Of course you did. You're a miraculous person. But anyway, when we turned up and got on the train, it was something scary.
It was something out of the Darjeeling Unlimited. Like it was something from India where there was chickens and there was goats.
No, come on. It wasn't that bad.
It felt like that.
It felt like maybe what a prison would, like when you walked into the little thing, it was like the bunk beds and it was very gray and there was not really linens on there and there was nowhere to sit. And there was 4 of us with far too many bags.
Oh, that was unfortunate.
It would have been awful. And so we get on there and struggle and get all our bags plus an 84-year-old plus a 3-year-old. Yeah. We get on there and then Paul's like almost has a panic. He's like, we got to get off.
I was pretty cool about it. I'm like, we got to get off. I didn't have a panic. I'm just like, we're not doing this.
So, yeah. And then my mom's like, what are we doing? Like, we just got on here. It's fine. Because she just rolls with things. And
Austin
like,
was so excited to be on a train.
I know, because he's never been on a train. And we built this whole thing up. So, anyway.
That's one of those moments that we thought we didn't plan very well.
It sounded like a great idea. Had it been what I had, obviously that was booked out, it would have been amazing. But
then we got on a flight, and the first class seats were almost the same price.
Cheaper than when we tried to book online. So we
went from almost spending 13 hours in like a prison cell to flying business class for 1 hour. Like
this is alchemy.
Yeah, we alchemized it.
That was a win. That was one of the pains that turned into a win.
We had a lot of those.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
But watching your mom with Austin when she would be tired or get frustrated or if he wasn't obeying, and then watching my mom with Austin when he wasn't obeying is like two very big triggers for Kate and I, because we are not trying to design a child or raise a child that just obeys our command. Like, that's not our measure of what a good boy is or a good child is, that he does what we say. Like, that's not...
And like shuts down all of his personal emotions, all of his self-expression in order to people please and do what is expected. And I think the main thing of that generation was children were to be seen and not heard. And so they were fear-mongered into just acquiescing and staying, which is just doing what they're told, basically.
The extreme version of that is The Sound of Music, right? Like, there's the husband who like has all the children obey and they like stand in line, and then in comes the Freedom Alchemist. in comes Julie Andrews.
The problem of Maria, yes.
Maria, to like introduce them to being fully self-expressed and music and dirt under their nails and like
climbing trees and making clothes out of curtains.
So we want to raise our children like that, connected to nature and music and playful and expressive rather than just obedient. That's not our mission or our goal.
And obey is not part of my mother's language at all. But she never wants to be controlled, which is funny because when she's tired, she becomes controlling. So that's an interesting thing. But obey is definitely Paul's mom's language. Like,
we were raised
at
very
all
different.
times, he must obey. He must obey, and it's going to be this big problem.
He's 3.
Yeah, it's like he's 3. Like
he's going to have trouble later in life. I was like, well, we'll deal with it as it comes. It's like But for him to just become a people pleaser and do what she wants him to do so that he doesn't disappoint, that's not the direction that we're taking. This whole parenting thing. And Kate actually brought me along because my first son, Oliver, was raised very much, I would say, with, we used Baby Wise, which is sleep training, which is letting them cry it out, and and then another book, which was an Amish book to train up a child, which is very disciplined, and they must obey to train up a child. It's like to training a horse. So those were the two kind of books that I was given by one of my mentors, and I thought that was the way. I even gave that book to probably 20 dads when I was on film sets or early in my modeling career. I would give them to young dads. I was like, this is going to change your life. And they all would thank me because they would be sleeping.
And here's the thing. I read it too, and before I had a child, I thought it was brilliant. Yeah. Because Oliver is an amazing kid, right? Like, he's this really special... Like, I feel so lucky as his stepmom because he was such an amazing child. Like, he always had his room immaculate. He was never a pig. He was always respectful. There's a lot of beautiful, beautiful things. And he really, like, that book really teaches parents that the world doesn't revolve around your child.
They're not the prince or the princess. They're a part of a system.
They're part of the team. I want to say team is a softer way of putting it. And so for me, because the system is like terrifying to me, but like, they're humans, they're not a process line. So for me, when I read it, I thought, this is brilliant. And because I had the example of who Oliver was, and I've been in Oliver's life since he was 10, it was, it made sense. Until
it didn't.
I had a child.
Well, no, until you studied what you studied with psychology and your
Yeah.
master's in NLP.
Yeah.
And some of the Tony Robbins stuff and some of the books that you've read.
Yeah.
You're like, wait, there's these, every children requires a little bit of a different thing to help them find their voice and their self-expression, and all of they're two very different children.
Yeah, they are. And who knows, right? If Oliver was raised differently, would he be slightly different? Who knows, right? Because the environment creates so much. And I think the main thing is, and I especially want to communicate because we're talking about children, there isn't a formula. There isn't. Right. Every child comes with its own set of circumstances or needs, and
they choose you.
And every parent has to adapt. Like, you know, we were lucky on this one because we have an extroverted child, and we're both pretty extroverted people. I feel like I've become more introverted, but Paul's extremely extroverted, and somehow Ozzy out extroverts Paul. I don't know how, but it happens.
Yeah.
Like, and so that works. But if we had an introverted child, it would definitely be more challenging, and we would need to discover different tools and techniques in order to accommodate this child that doesn't like being out and about, doesn't like all these sorts of things. So you really have to, there isn't one way or one method, just like we teach people on how to really step into their power and have their body work for them and doing all those sorts of things. And it isn't a cookie cutter method in order to get there. Everyone has their unique thing that they have to work through. And usually it's healing trauma within their body and things like that. And so that's unique to the person.
That's right.
So raising a child is very unique too. And you have to, that you can't just be like, this is the method we're using for our 5 children. And sure, it can work, but does it make your children love you or feel connected to you or thrive in who they are? Probably not. And so tuning into that. And the main thing that I think has been really cool that is maybe a new development is that we now understand that children's their prefrontal cortex is all that's online, which is basically their amygdala, which is their creature brain, which is our oldest brain that's been like inherited for the millennia of humankind, right? So that is the thing that's running the show, and that is emotions and like reactions and survival and all of these things.
Fear.
And so that's why they're raw emotions, you know, and that's what I love when people are like, oh, I want to be happy. I'm like, ugh.
I want your kids to be happy.
But you know, happiness is such a fleeting thing. And I give the example of a kid falls over and scrapes his knees. It's the end of the world and they're bawling. And unfortunately, a lot of people go, here's a lollipop to distract them from their pain. And they're like, yay! So it's like they're happy.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's not generated from something deep inside. It's so fleeting. So when people are like, I just want to be happy, I'm like, give me something.
And then
real
you've just given your kid an eating disorder.
Yeah. That's a different conversation. Whole nother conversation. So I think what's really pivotal and important about that is these little beings are so smart. And so when we haven't programmed them to how society expects them to be and how they're supposed to act and all of that sort of thing, they are raw, unlimited creativity and power and genius. Like every child is a genius until it is programmed into its limitations. And so the fact that we now know that this is what's operating the show, and logic doesn't come in till much later, but they're so smart. They can figure things out that they seem like they're little people. And then people think that they understand what they understand. Like their map of the world is like, this is a child and they know. And it's like, no, they don't know. They don't know what's happening. They don't understand in the way you understand. They don't have the logic you have at this, like, and you're as a parent. And yet we're punishing them for not understanding that logic.
Right, or being disappointed in them. And just being around, you know, our parents and watching them be frustrated because the child wasn't obeying or wasn't doing what they thought they should have been doing in the moment. It was interesting watching it because it would trigger our parents into how their little child was being wounded or wasn't able to be fully self-expressed because they're just kids. Like we put this expectation on them to be young adults, but like Kate said, and like science shows, they can't really reason until they're 8. Like girls are a little bit earlier than boys in terms of understanding their actions have a consequence. The rest of it, they're just making up their response to like make us happy or to make it work so that they can survive. But, I think this reminds me of the story when I was around the fire with Oliver when he was 5 or 6 years old. And it really comes down to fear and love. And Oliver was obeying me a lot as a 5, 6-year-old kid. And he was obedient to a point. But then we were around the fire with my teacher, Kathy, and her daughter and some friends. And it was a hot fire. And we were in Big Sur, this beautiful place. And Oliver was running around the fire and not being very safe with his body. Like if the sun was going down, it was a full moon. It was like the witching hour. You could feel the animals in the woods. Like it was a lot of energy. And I kept saying, Oliver, stop. Like this is dangerous. Da, da, da. And then he would stop for a little bit. And then Kathy just looked at me so gently and he's like, he's only obeying you because he's afraid of you. And it hit me so deeply. I was like, what? He's like, yeah, he's afraid that you're going to punish him, or you're a big guy, you're like a bear and he's a child, and you're not present with him. And I was just at the time tapping my foot. Like my foot was going up and down on the ground. She's like, look at your foot's tapping. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, you're not present. And so I was like, okay, what do you mean now? And she goes, well, this is how you do it. She goes, this crazy thing you're doing, Oliver, if you want to do it, you can do it, but go inside the tent. It's safe for you to do it in the tent, but around the fire, you're just going to get hurt. We want you to be here with us. That was the language. But how you're behaving doesn't work for here. And so you have a choice. You can stop doing that or go in the tent. And in the tent, you could do it up and go wild in there like a crazy like bear. And so he chose to go in the tent, zipped it up. And it was like from a movie, a cartoon. There's like a leg coming out the tent this way, and the tent pegs are bending, and my child's there. And it's so clear because the sun was setting, fire's going. You could just feel the energy of the place. And then it would quiet down in the tent after he would throw himself against the tent. And then we're like, are you finished, buddy? And he'd be like, not yet. And then bam, the tent would start bending again. And then finally, maybe half hour later, he comes out of it. It wasn't a timeout. It wasn't a like, go over there, you're not behaving. It was like, you could be with us here, or you could do that in the tent where it's safe. He came out, my foot had stopped tapping by that time, and he came around the fire, and he laid his little head down on my lap, and I was like stroking his face, and my leg was not tapping. And I just remember welling up with tears because it's been really one of the first times where it felt like he chose to come to me and to cuddle in, and Kathy was just sitting there quietly, just smiling, because it was like such an important distinction in my journey of obeying God out of fear and out of love. That was the beginning of me changing my understanding of how do I connect with my father figure, which is God, from a place of love and not fear. And it kind of started there. And of course, it went on to India with the motorbike and that understanding of fear versus love. But I just wanted to share that story because it was such a huge beginning to me really understanding, like, what good is if my son obeys me just out of fear? Like, fear is such a base, low level, low vibration instinct that's going to eventually create a rebel and not have connection. And, having connection be the North Star rather than correction was really what I learned in that.
Yeah. Something that I've really learned from you, which is super potent, is sometimes the thing that's the hardest in the moment is the thing that will set everyone free in the end. And that choosing the easy path in the moment will create so much disconnection and problems in the end. I'll give you a really obvious example of that. If you put a young child on an iPad so that you can have a nice quiet dinner, that is teaching them to disconnect from you. And then you wonder why your teenager hates you, shuts the door, and just sits there like this at the dinner table rather than connecting with you. That is why, right? And it's really hard to disimprint that when that's their pivotal years of like creating what the world is. If you're like mommy and daddy just need, or like mommy or daddy is going out with friends and we just need you to be quiet and disconnect from us so we can have a nice time, that is the recipe for having a disconnected child. Like you're not involving them or including them in the process. Yes, does your dinner get disrupted?
Is it easier?
Of course. It's not as easy, you know, they might have a tent, you know, all sorts of things might go on. But you're with them. And so if you want your teenagers to sit with you and have beautiful, powerful conversations, you got to do the hard thing earlier on. And we get it. Like, this world is demanding, and it is so much easier to get all the things done you need to do on your huge list on top of working and this if you just throw them in front of a TV or throw them in front of the thing. But it's not going to create anything of what you want in the future. I remember reading this story. I don't know if I've told this story on a podcast before, but of someone saying, oh, we had all these delayed flights and I'm so grateful for iPads because all the kids could just sit on the iPad. And then I remember shortly after there was some crazy storm. We were flying and there was this insane storm that happened literally like a hurricane or like something. It was a hurricane warning and everything got grounded. We were just about to board and then everything.
A snowstorm or something. It was
like crazy rain.
Right.
Because a tornado or something. Our bags were out in it. They didn't even load onto the plane, so they were drenched when we got them. But so it was this crazy. It was already late for Austin because he was really young, and so getting him on and getting him to sleep was already a push. And then we got delayed by 4 hours or something. And we had to just surrender to the moment of what was happening. And I remember we got up and we went running around, and I think there was Christmas trees or something up at that time. I'm not sure where we were going, what we were doing. But I remember just chasing him around Christmas trees and running around. And in this hard moment, we created this beautiful memory that I will remember forever because it was so filled with joy.
Yeah, we were wrestling on the ground. Yeah. It was dirty ground, but like we didn't care. We
just had so much fun in that moment running around this airport because we were delayed, rather than like, here, sit on an iPad so we can all just have a piece of moment. Like, no memories are ever going to be made by sitting on an iPad or on a phone, ever.
Yeah.
Like, these devices are robbing us of our lives in the guise of being easier or whatever. But it's creating dopamine hits. It's changing our brains. It's actually really like appalling. So the more we can stay off, the better. And definitely, if there's any advice I could give, which I'm not here to give any advice, but the amount of psychology stuff I've done and understand is just keep them off everything until at least 2 years old. Like, if you don't want an addict for a child, if you don't want to change their brain do not put them on anything until after 2. It makes such a big difference.
You wouldn't even never give them their own device till like they're in high school or after. But we're talking about like you could sit down with them and watch a movie after 2 or 3.
After 2, yeah.
We waited till he was after 2 before he saw like a cinema or movie on our screen, but we sat down together.
Yeah,
and
we never do it without.
The old school. But that's not what we're here to talk about.
That's not what we're here to talk about. We're here to talk about.
We should wrap it up. We wanted just to share the incredible experience it was and the gift of having, our parents, Kate's mom at 84, my mom at 77, and witness the way that they interacted with our little guy and how it made us really understand that the way that we're raising him, which is love-based, which is not outcome-based or him being obedience being the measure of if he's doing well, that how impactful it was and just how it really proved to me that we were on the right path. And just I saw it. Like you can just see the frustration when they're not doing what the grandparents want him to be doing, and that the conversation is he should be obeying you. He's being disrespectful,
And the faces, oh my Lord, the faces of
the sour faces. And many of you listening probably can relate. And if some of you are grandparents, this is you got work to do. When you get around your grandkid, don't be dragging that way you were parented in and helicopter all over your kids and tell them how to parent. They're just, unless you're asked, just like shut it.
Well, I think it's good to bring in what I think these are all beautiful conversations because they're a place where we can heal. We can help them heal certain things. And I think the beautiful thing, we had this conversation this morning actually as we were getting up, or last night, I don't know, but we're in bed. And it was around like our mothers come from polar opposite places. Paul's mother's deeply religious, deeply follows all of that. And so there's like, that is the law and the rule. My mother is very spiritual and creative and totally different in belief structure. Your mother was brought up, like she idolizes her parents and has all these like, regardless of how the upbringing was, like has this idolizing of them. My mother was brought up, her father died quite young, and her mother was very harsh and mean. And in order to survive on the farm, she fostered a lot of children. So there was no time for any care or love. They were allowed to play with their one doll on a Sunday for 2 hours only. And if they were bad in any way, they didn't get that 2 hours. It was all like, she was told she was ugly when she actually, if you see pictures of her when she was young, she looked exactly like Marilyn Monroe. It's insane. But she was told she was ugly, worth nothing, all of those sorts of things. So she had to overcome all of those. And she's done a magnificent job because she's love personified. She's just so glorious and so about people's dreams, which is where I get it from. But yeah, so she's overcome a lot to be who she is. But there's what Paul was saying, like they both got the same kind of faces, and Mum's is around.
It's like a stinky face.
Yeah, Mum's is around
Sour.
if she feels she's being controlled. Like if she's just interacting with Austin and she feels we're trying to control how she's doing that, then she gets the like stinky face.
Yeah, she snapped at everyone. She's like, don't control me. It's like, well, you're controlling my son, so stop controlling him and I'll stop controlling you.
So there was that.
Family dynamics. Wow.
And then Paul's mom's like, he must obey, and no, and you're doing this, and like timeouts, and you have to do this because she watched the Super Nanny, and she
were spanked. I was spanked.
Yeah, I was spanked too. I think everyone of our generation was spanked. It was a normal thing to spank your child. Now I think the tips of when it was a beating and a spanking got blurred, which is why it's so out of control now. And that's something I want to bring out. Let me about spanking. Let me circle back to that, but let me finish out this thing of what I was saying. But what Paul says, like, it's weird, they're so different, but it's like the same stink face kind of thing about it. And I was like, it's just their childhood wounding. Like everything comes back to where they had a pressure or a lack of self-expression. And then they're like, I turned out great, so this is the way, like I was spanked, but this is the way. And I've actually listened to a lot of people saying I was an out of control child and I got spanked a lot, and I needed that in order to be a decent human being. And my question is, did you need that, or did you need connection? Were you playing up because you didn't have the connection you were desiring? Right. And did that spanking tell you to suppress your anger, but then it's going to come out of you in other ways? So did you learn any techniques or learn anything in which to actually maneuver that anger? Because anger is a natural emotion. We make it seem like it's bad and wrong. It's not. It's part of who we are. But we need to learn how to express it in ways that don't impact other people, right? And so if you learn as a child, hey, you get to be angry, but let's go punch this pillow right here. So, and like, let's scream into the wild. Let's like how do we funnel and channel that anger into something productive so that they can release it, not be ashamed of it, not bring it down, or not be beaten into submission by spankings. So, and I'm sure most of us, like I got spanked a few times, and I'm like, oh, it's some scar. It's just like, okay, I was being a little shit and that's what happens.
Yeah, but not everyone has that experience of it. Some would feel incredibly traumatized by it.
Exactly. Especially if they didn't get any love, like if there was the spankings but not the connection. And so this really is what, to wrap this in a full circle, it's always about connection, not correction. Like,
if your child is acting out and they feel like you need to correct them or adjust their behavior, what's really probably missing is they just want to connect with you in some way. And that's for young parents or grandparents on here, that's such a beautiful, simple way to reestablish connection, is just get down at their level and play and get right into whatever they're doing rather than try to force an outcome. I mean, it's just so devastating. And if you want to get them to come into the kitchen to have breakfast, if you're yelling from the kitchen, come have breakfast, and they're out there playing with their cars, there's almost zero chance that they're in their world. So you got to go out there, pick up their car, play with them, and believe the car's like, oh, I'm a hungry little car. I smell that bacon. And we're like, I'm going to go to the kitchen and get some bacon. And then you take the car to the kitchen and they'll take their little car to the kitchen. Like that's, instead of, it's not a measure of a good child if you're like, come and eat. And they're like, yes, sir.
And I
Sorry.
think there was this
from my perspective. Anyway.
Yeah. Absolutely. And it's really learning how to, if a child's being defiant, if you can bring play into it, like become a cat and be like,
you're really good at that.
And, really figure out how to get onto their level, they'll immediately do whatever you want. There's a way for them to get on board with you. Yeah. But you have to do it through the language that they understand, which is play.
Yeah.
And I read this amazing book. Unfortunately, it was read by the author, and she had a terrible voice, so it took me out of it. I was like, ugh. But the messaging was beautiful, and it was talking about how a lot of Western children are like, they scream and they're like tantrums and they're like not fun to be around, and that children, like Inuit children, there was African tribes, and then I think Mexico, or there was somewhere
Oaxaca or something
there that of all these children that are just so amazingly behaved. They're part of the family, they're part of the team, they step up, they're mature, they're happy, there's and so she went into these different cultures to understand what they were doing. And the Inuits, they have this really amazing thing. One thing is they tell these big stories of mythology stories to keep children safe, because if they get in the snow or they go in the water, they're going to die, right? So they had all these mythological, like kind of scary creatures and monsters and stuff
in the ocean
they would storytell, and that would keep the children safe and accountable.
We have pterodactyls on our roof, so that he doesn't go up on the roof because there's no good railings for him up there. So he doesn't go up there by himself.
Yeah. It's worked really well. It's great. And some people would be like, that's lying. And it's like, no, if you're creating safety through story, I mean, that's how we grew through the ages, through stories.
Yes.
Right? And so the Inuits have this thing where everything is always the parent's fault. Like if a child knocks over a parent's coffee, then the other parent would say, why did you place the coffee there where that could be knocked over? It was never the child's fault. It's like, and so we often do this thing if Austin's having this wangy moment where he's like, and everyone's going, that's just 3-year-old tantrums. No, there's a reason if they're like that. So it's like, did we miss the hunger cues? Did we feed him a little too late? Did we not get him enough sleep? Did we, what are the symptoms?
Thirsty?
Has he not drunk enough water today? Is his brain not powered? Has he not had quiet time?
Drank too much coffee.
Is he overstimulated? So drank way too much coffee. So like to really.
Whenever I knock over something, I'm always, Katie's always like, she always asks me why I put it there. Like, she's really good at, if there's ever anything, if Kate knocks over something of mine, I'm always like, oh, I should never have put that there. So we've learned it applies in relationship only if you want peace and harmony.
That's different. I think that's different.
I'm just playing.
But yeah, so
but that's, I think, what we want you left with, right?
Yeah,
is that connection over correction every time.
And if we're not,
that's at least what we're learning.
If we're not in survival mode, which so many people are, but if you can, and there's ways out of that. Even if you're in a really tense situation, you have to create mindfulness in your life. Meditation, movement, ways in which to take care of yourself. And you can, no matter how busy you are, you can fit that in. There's 24 hours in a day. Everyone can fit in like 30 minutes of something for themselves. You just have to believe in it and want it. So if you can create any type of mindfulness to get yourself out of survival, then you can have more presence with your children. And if you are more present with your children, you're going to have the relationship with them for life that you want. It's like the finest schools and all the nannies and all the gadgets and all of the extracurricular things isn't going to create the relationship that you want. And when you are on your deathbed, you don't want your child being like, cool, can't wait till you die so I can get my inheritance and live my life. Like, you want a kid that's like there going, I'm going to be here holding your hand while you take your last breath.
And continue the legacy.
Yeah. And thank you for showing up and being present and being there. That's what they care about. So, yeah. And this culture, unfortunately, doesn't breed that. It's like, be Instagram famous and oh my God, and let's look like I'm an amazing parent, but like really just taking pictures. Like, let's stop all that and let's just be with them.
Just connect. Yeah.
Yeah. Connect.
Yeah. Well, freedom, baby. So some of you parents might be, or if you're thinking about being a parent and it's like, oh, that would just take away all my freedom. Similar to how commitment brought me more freedom in the relationship is the same with children. If like children are a pain in your butt, you're probably not connecting with them, because if you're able to drop in with them and get on their level, time vanishes and you're transported and you get to, in a way, heal your inner child, which is what having children is such a gift, is you get another shot at nurturing your inner child. And so if you're being really hard on your child, there's a good chance you're actually being hard on that inner child part of yourself. And so it's an extra chance to have a little extra compassion, count to 10 in your head, be a little more patient, a little more loving with that child. And in the same way, you can actually bring some healing to your wounded little child that maybe wasn't given that presence and that tenderness and that love and that chance to express themselves and not be made wrong for like having a flip out.
And on the flip side of that, I never wanted children.
Right.
Because my mother was 1000% committed to me and dedicated. And
well, it's like you said. Like,
well, and that to me translated as she was like my slave. Sorry, Mom, if you're listening to this, but you were the most beautiful slave ever. But she literally was all about me. And so I got this amazing life full of love, but then I was terrified to have a child because it was like, I care about freedom so much. And I was like, I cannot do a lesser job than what she did. Yeah. And I cannot be a slave. Like, I cannot have my freedom ripped away from me, so children are not for me.
Right.
And I think in this day and age, there's this younger generation where they're like, I don't want kids. I think it's more and more common where everyone's like, I don't want kids, because it seems like too overwhelming and too much, because this world is a lot. And so, but I was that person, so that's why I can make fun of it, right? And I just want, everyone to know this. I think because I had such a bad concept of what it would be, I haven't had a single day where it was hard. And that is also because I have an extraordinary partner. But I haven't had a single day in 3.5 years where I'm like, this is too much.
Well, you were given letters to open when it was hard at your baby shower.
I asked everyone to write me a letter for me to open when it was overwhelming too much and too hard.
And she needed encouragement and strength from these letters from your baby shower.
From all my friends. And I still have a pile of them sitting there unopened. The only ones I've opened were because of an accident. They were put somewhere and I was like, what is this? And I opened it and I'm like, oh, that's one of those. So because also I had such a poor intention, I think a lot of people that do want children are like, I'm going to be this mom. And they create all of that. Expectation is resentment under construction. So if you have these ideas of who you're going to be as a mom and then it doesn't turn up that way, then you're miserable about it. Whereas I only thought it would be terrible and it's been nothing but magical. And just the capacity of my heart and the explosion and expansion of what I'm able to be with and my patience. I was not a patient person.
No,
my level of patience is a millionfold these days.
You're such a great mom.
It's because you're such a great dad. I think too, it's really hard to be an amazing mom in a vacuum. If you have a good vacuum partner, great family structure, like people around you to support you.
Like single moms are your hero.
I honestly believe they're my hero. But if they have the right networks around them, then they can be equally as powerful.
Yeah.
So it's just finding your tribe, finding the ways in which you can take spaciousness to refill your cup.
Oh yeah.
Love from your overflow, not be emptying your cup just to fill your child. I think that's so important and that's what needs to be embodied in parenting.
Yeah. Well, let's wrap it up.
Yeah.
Thank you guys, ladies and gentlemen, for stopping by. And if you love it, please subscribe and share it. And we do this every single week. And so if you're seeing this on YouTube, there would be a little button there. You can hit subscribe. If you're on Apple iTunes, we would love just to hear in the comments, give us a little review there and give us some comments on what you guys would love us to kind of crack into. And the lens that we look at everything through is how do you alchemize whatever circumstance you're in into freedom.
Pain into your power.
Yeah. And that's really, and so that's why, that is what our North Star is, freedom and becoming alchemists. How do you change? How do you have these tools to shift no matter what your circumstance is from something that drives you nuts into something that is just a pure gift? And you can view life as happening for you instead of to you. Yeah. All right. We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.